Hogwarts, rising as Harry's twin with power. Episode 141, entering Gringotts again. Have breakfast. Harry was handed a handful of flying powder by Mrs. Weasley. Since it was the first time he used it, he arrived at Tipping Alley. Here he saw Malfoy. Don't touch anything, Draco. Harry hid in the black closet of the Bock and Bork, secretly listening to the conversation between the big and the small Malfoy. I thought you came here to buy me something. I said I was going to buy you a broom. Lucius raised his eyelids, and Draco was a little angry, remembering the scene of Harry riding a broom all over the sky in the first year. He was jealous and had been nagging and complaining. Harry almost laughed triumphantly. Sure enough, Malfoy was jealous of him. You've told me at least 10 times. Lucius knocked on the counter, and a hunched man appeared before them. I came to sell things, and the ministry began to strictly investigate. It must be that Weasley. Harry listened to Lucius's denigration of Mr. Weasley and was furious. And glad Darren wasn't here anymore. Otherwise Darren would have rushed out to argue with Malfoy. Then he will be killed by the evil Malfoy. It was horrible. What's that? Draco Malfoy suddenly pointed to a withered hand and asked. That's the hand of Glory, the thief and the robber. No, I want my son to be better than a thief and a robber. Of course, if he doesn't study well, there may only be such a way. Lucius said slowly. Dad, the professors are too eccentric. That Hermione Granger, a hemp wizard. Draco spoke angrily, but was interrupted by Lucius. Oh, you've not only been surpassed by a witch from a non-wizarding family, you can't even compare to Darren and Darren Porter's grades. Harry heard this and quickly covered his mouth. That's of course, the cleverness of Darren and Hermione, that's what everybody knows. All that remained was a bunch of tedious bargaining, a headache for Harry to listen to. Finally, Lucius and they were finished, and Harry slipped out. However, he almost had an accident in the alley of the overturned alley, but fortunately he met Hagrid, and he walked out safely. Oh my God, I've finally found you, Harry, and if I can't find you again, Darren will go crazy. When Hermione saw Harry, she quickly pulled him forward and ran forward. Apparently Hermione also came to buy books today. She had met the Weasley family early. Harry, who had been pulled in front by Hermione, finally knew why she was in such a hurry. Because there, Harry saw Darren, whose eyes were full of mist. Brother, I almost lost you. I knew I should be pulling you. Ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, Darren little baby, don't say stupid things, Felu powder can only come alone. Oh, my little one, little pity, and thankfully Harry found it, or the boy would have cried. Mrs. Weasley wrapped her arms around Darren. Darren smiled deftly. Thank you for your comfort, I feel much better now. And Hagrid, thank you for finding your brother. Ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, oh, my Darren, I'm there to run errands. You're right, otherwise he'll be caught by those guys. No, Darren, Harry is all right, don't worry, I'm just talking hypothetical, Hagrid quickly argued. Hagrid's giant hand was pinched by Molly, and he quickly changed his mouth. Well, Molly. I will also pay attention to safety, I will only go there just to buy insect repellent. Goodbye, Hogwarts, goodbye. Hagrid was startled by Mrs. Weasley's enthusiasm. He was a little embarrassed and ran away. Looking at the back is a bit of a deserted and fleeing meaning. By this time, Harry had told Darren about the Malfoys again. He's scared. What I want to do most is find evidence of his crime, Mr. Weasley leaned over and said. He had just heard Harry's story. Knowing that Lucius had run to Upside Down Alley to sell things, he said triumphantly. Beware of the point. That family is not a good troublemaker. Mrs. Weasley touched him and said worriedly. You think I can't fight him? Mr. Weasley raised his fists, wanting the children to see his muscles. Then the next second, he was attracted to the Granger family, who had just walked into Gringotts with them. This is Muggle coins? He squeezed one with great interest. After a while, Mr. Weasley and Mr. Granger became acquainted with Muggle coins, and they decided to have a drink together. Then they went to the underground vault together to withdraw money. When he reached the Weasleys' vault, Harry was embarrassed. Because there was only 1 gold gallon in it, a small pile of silver seco. Harry didn't dare to speak at all. But Darren became curious. So he turned to Mr. Weasley and asked, Sir, did you take all your salary to buy a car? The Weasleys were pretty poor. But Darren estimates his family's poverty is because he doesn't save money. If you have money, you just spend it. Just like in the 3rd grade, Mr. Weasley won 500 gallons, and the whole family went to Egypt to play. And Mr. Weasley also bought a car for remodeling. There may be other Muggle stuff. Anyway, Darren felt that his family was not really poor. Mr. Weasley's salary is definitely not low. Oh yes, there are many other little babies. Cough, Molly, you heard you wrong, I didn't talk to Darren anymore. Mr. Weasley said with a playful smile. But he winked at Darren. Apparently he also had a lot of makeover items. Well, hurry up, get the money, we're going to go get Harry and Darren. Mrs. Weasley clearly felt that Mr. Weasley was teaching Darren badly. Such a well-behaved child, if she is taught by her husband, she will feel that her conscience will hurt. Harry watched blankly at Darren and the Weasley family. He also thought that Mr. Weasley's salary was too low to support the family. Alright, kids, hurry up. Next stop, as the trolley continued, it finally reached the Potter's vault. As soon as he opened the door, even Darren couldn't help but hiss. Episode 142, is not a small bun. In just 1 year, Paggy had made the copper nather and silver shika here disappear, replaced by a golden gallon that had doubled 5 or 6 times. Thinking about the way Patsy usually cries and tells Darren that they are too poor and that he has to continue to work hard, Darren actually feels a shock. Is Paige a talent for making money? Oh my god, Darren. I remember a year ago here. Harry described the scene he had seen a year earlier, and then stared at the scene now. He was shocked and broken. So, brother, can I take some of the money in it and go buy gifts for Mr. Weasley and his wife? Can you still send Ron a set of books for each of them? Ding, father plus 100. Harry listened to Darren, who whispered a question in his ear, and laughed helplessly. The money in this is also yours, how you want to spend it, brother doesn't care. Only, I thought you didn't think they could afford books, how come? Although Mr. Weasley's salary should be okay, it is really difficult to raise so many children. I heard that Ginny was going to use old books, so I thought I should do something. Ding, father plus 100. This year's Gilderoy Lockhart's book is indeed very expensive. To buy so many sets of books, the money that Mrs. Weasley took out was not enough. But for what reason? Harry scratched his hair tangledly. This way of giving things was really important, and he didn't want Mrs. Weasley to think they were sympathetic. When they go out, I'll let Paggy send them the portraits of the Potter's ancestors. Well, Darren, you've always been so clever. Harry was amazed. Waited out of Gringotts. Darren called Paige. In the background of Paggy's stack of sounds, Darren's little master is really smart, Darren's little master is really kind, and quickly pulls Harry back to the Weasley family's ranks. Dear Mr. Weasley. Paige appeared in front of Mr. Weasley. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were startled. Hello, I'm Paggy, the house elf of the Potter family. Paggy raised her chin majestically. Obviously small body, but it looks exceptionally tall. Right, I remember, the Potter family's business, now this Paige. Responsible for. Mr. Weasley whispered to Mrs. Weasley. Then you came today. Mrs. Weasley looked at him questioningly. Oh, yes, for during this time the 2 little masters lived in Mr. Weasley's house. Ancestor portraits knew about it, and they thought that the Potters should respond and not be rude. So, order me to send these gifts. Paige snapped her fingers. A bunch of gifts appeared in front of the Weasley family. Several sets of Hogwarts books, as well as a brand new wizard's robe that needs to be prepared. There are some other utensils. The most valuable is the gift box made of gold on it. These. Mrs. Weasley wanted to refuse. No, madam, I'm just a poor house elf, and if you don't take it, I'll be punished. Paige showed a look of embarrassment. Then it pointed to the gift box made of gold, opened it, and said proudly, this is the latest antidote invented by our little master Darren, and the Ministry of Magic is currently preparing to nominate the little master to Sir Merlin Medal of the First Class. Just 3 days ago, Headmaster Dumbledore was the recommender of Darren's little master, and there should be a newspaper mentioning it today. So fast? Harry and Mr. Weasley rushed up excitedly. They had long known about the potion that Darren had made. Mr. Weasley also mentioned that Darren should receive Sir Merlin's 2nd class of arms. Harry thought that Darren was a 1st class, or even a special level. I didn't expect to get a 1st class nomination. Of course, this is the efforts of Darren's little master, but also the honor of Paige, and it is also a grand event for the Potter family. The ancestral portraits in the family are all happy and broken, if they can't come out, they even want to prepare a banquet for Darren's little master, Paige said proudly. Mrs. Weasley cherished holding Darren's antidote. She sighed and said, it's really powerful, I feel that according to the instructions above, it seems that except for a few special toxins, everything else seems to be able to solve. No, this antidote is not very good except for the effect on wolf venom, everything else. Darren Little Master is a genius and is an honor in this world, Paggy boasted. Duranqua's face turned red. It started, and sure enough, he knew that as soon as Paggy came, the style of the painting changed in seconds. After coaxing Paggy away, Mrs. Weasley and Mr. Weasley became closer to Darren. They even let Fred and George learn like Darren. Oh, Mom. We don't hate Darren, but you can't compare it, we can't reach it. Yeah, that's something a lot of professors don't do. One by one, they moved their new set of books in Mrs. Weasley's glare. Ginny also got a new crucible and a wizard suit. Then let's go home. Yeah, there's nothing fun out there either. Fred was disgusted, and they were going to go home and experiment with the ghoul at home. No, no one is allowed to go back. Today is Lockhart's new book meeting, how can you not visit? Mrs. Weasley said excitedly. Harry looked at each other and was about to say they didn't like to look at it when he heard Hermione look very excited and say, Lockhart? No, I mean this year's books were all written by him. Cough, he's very talented. Like Darren, Darren will grow up to be as handsome and powerful as Lockhart. Darren showed an embarrassed expression and was actually very unimpressed. Say he'll look good in the future, he recognizes. But to say that he will become the kind of riotous bag that Lockhart looks like in the original book, he does not recognize it. He, Darren, little father, is not a little bun. Episode 143, Poor Ghost Weasley. Soon they were at the Ritz bookstore. It's crowded. Everywhere are people who want to go in and visit. There was also a large banner hanging outside. Gilderoy Lockhart. Autographed sale of the autobiography I Can Magic. Ladies. Don't squeeze. Don't squeeze. Oh, Lockhart. He's so handsome. He also wrote many books, which are said to be his true scriptures. I want to see him soon. The witches around were like crazy. Mrs. Weasley squeezed even harder. She blushed a little and said, let's squeeze in quickly so we can see him. Led by Mrs. Weasley, they soon reached the front of the crowd. Gilderoy Lockhart was sitting behind a desk. He was surrounded by his large photographs. He himself wears a sky blue robe, which matches his blue eyes. Every time I blinked at the people around me, there were the screams of many witches. A man in a pointed wizard's hat was taking pictures of him with a large camera, and said to Ron, Jean, let me pass. This lively scene made Ron can't help but sigh, it looks really amazing. His exclamation was heard by Lockhart. Lockhart glanced at him, then shifted his gaze to Harry. After watching for a while, he suddenly jumped up and shouted, isn't this Harry Potter? What about your brother? What about Darren Porter? The crowd gave way to him. Lockhart walked over excitedly, tapping Harry on the shoulder, grabbing him by the arm, pulling him to the front and asking. Darren. He's still out there, and I can't find him for a moment and a half. Harry hesitated to say that Darren had just been pulled to the front by Mrs. Weasley. But Darren saw a witch crying to see Lockhart, so he gave up his place to the witch. Darren also said to go outside and help others to see which lady needed help. I don't know where the result is now. It turned out that this was the case. He must have thought that one of his ordinary students had actually occupied Lockhart's headlines, and felt very sorry to leave. It's not. My brother is. Before Harry could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Lockhart, who shook Harry's shoulder vigorously. Ignoring what he said directly, no, Harry, you don't have to explain, the great Lockhart doesn't bother with a child at all. I've been awarded the Order of Merlin 2nd class, and I wouldn't care about that. His words overwhelmed Harry's other voices. Harry had been saying that Darren had been awarded the Order of Merlin 1st class, Billahat, much more powerful. But Lockhart suppressed his voice to death. Harry, you're smiling so beautifully. We can make headlines on the front page together. Lockhart showed his white teeth. Harry tried to struggle, but was still pressed tightly by him. Lockhart also confronted everyone as if they were in a very good relationship. Young Harry Potter, and his younger brother, Darren Porter, came to the Ritz bookstore to buy my full set of books. He pulled Harila tighter. There were also several poses for people to take pictures. But what they don't know is that they're going to get more important than books. That's right, it's me. Just this year, I am honored to announce that I will be Professor of the Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts. Lockhart gushed out. By the time Harry finally escaped from the palm of his hand, it had been a long time. When he was about to wipe his sweat, he realized that he already had a whole set of Lockhart's books in his hand. He gave all the books to Hermione, because the Weasleys had already sent them new books by Patsy, and only Hermione hadn't bought them yet. You must like that, right? Porter? Just as Harry was giving the book, Malfoy's voice came. He turned around warily. Sure enough, it was Malfoy. What do you say? What do I say? I said the famous Harry Potter must like the front page headlines, right? Malfoy said sarcastically. Then the next moment, he heard an angry voice say, Malfoy, you are bullying my brother again. I said that if you have the ability, you will argue with me directly. Ding, father plus 100. Ding, father plus 100. Ding, father plus 50. Ding, Darren Porter. It's you again. Do you think I've been ignoring you, because I'm afraid of you? Draco shouted angrily. Obviously he is Darren's real brother, and Darren will stand in front of that scar every time. When he took pictures with that Lockhart, he didn't even think about taking you with him. Would you like to be his little follower? Draco said angrily. Although he was very jealous of Harry going to the newspaper. But he also saw that when Harry went to the newspaper, he didn't even think about calling Darren. He must be afraid of you stealing the limelight. Draco concluded. His words were going to drive Harry crazy. He didn't think so at all, and at first, he really didn't find Darren. Later, he found out that Lockhart was not a very good person, and he did not want Darren to suffer in the past. How did Malfoy's mouth turn him into a vanity-loving man? What if Darren misunderstood? But before he could speak, he saw Darren clench his fists in anger and say, "My brother didn't think like this, Malfoy. If you say this about my brother again, I'll smash your nose with my fist and let you go to St. Mungo's before school starts." Ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding. Darren accepted the rewards and glared at Malfoy. Malfoy snorted, and he refused to speak to Darren, the bastard. Darren is a big fool, what is he talking to him? So he looked at Ron unhappily. If you can't trouble Scarhead, then trouble Ron. Weasley, I see that your family bought a lot of books this time. I'm afraid you've emptied your house, right? I think, in order to buy these things, your family is going to go hungry, and the poor ghost Weasley will die. Episode 144 is silently free. Ding, sensing that there is a scene of the Holy Father system playing around the host, now release a temporary task. Don't use the silent punch Malfoy, punch him in the nose and say, "Because you helped me, I don't use that kind of power, you can fight back." Ding, after the mission is completed, get the reward prediction card. Will the host receive the task? Access, hitting people. Darren didn't think about it at all, and decided that he must do it. He rushed up and punched Malfoy in the nose. Darren. Malfoy looked back at Darren in shock, and then heard Darren say unceremoniously, "Malfoy, I know you've helped me many times, so I don't use power, and you can fight back. But, today you lost and you have to apologize to Ron." Ding, congratulations to the host for getting the prophecy card. Prophecy card, when used, a prophecy ball will be generated, and the host can fill the prophecy ball with contents, which will eventually be realized. Note, don't be outrageous, otherwise the prophecy card will be destroyed automatically. It's a little guy with a personality. Hey! This prophecy card seems to be quite interesting. But Darren didn't have time to think about it either. Don't use silence to fight with Malfoy, you still need to pay attention. Then you're welcome. Malfoy pounced on it too, and the two of them wrestled together. Ron and Harry next to him were anxiously pulling a rack next to them. How did the fight start? Lucius walked over casually, and then saw Darren and Malfoy fighting. His face was green. Stop. Lucius, oh, this is your good son. Mr. Weasley looked at Lucius coldly. What's the matter with you? Oh, you nosy poor ghost. Have they recently paid you overtime? Lucius looked at Ginny's somewhat worn-out clothes and smiled contemptuously. Oh, it looks like it wasn't given, so why are you going to be a wizarding world? Scum, what do I want you to do? Mr. Weasley said with a flushed face. Of course, of course. Look at the friends you made. Lucius set his disdainful eyes on Mr. Granger. Boo. Ginny's crucible was smashed by Mr. Weasley on Lucius. Then Mr. Weasley pounced on Lucius. Lucius was slammed into a bookshelf. Hit him on the head. Hammer him. Come on, Dad. Arthur, don't do this. The Weasley family shouted. The whole street was in chaos. Darren punched Malfoy in the face. Then I got up and was trying to say a few words. Suddenly, I found that the whole street was bustling. Is he causing another big trouble? No. In the original book, Mr. Weasley also fought with Lucius. It has nothing to do with him. Ding, sensing that there is a scene of the Holy Father system playing around the host, now release a temporary task. When Mr. Weasley fought, use silence, pull them away, and say, "Two gentlemen, beat me again and sue Headmaster Dumbledore." Ding, after the task is completed, get the right to use silently for free. Will the host receive the task? Pick up. Darren quickly took it. It was even possible for him to use it silently for free. 1,000 at a time, he was not very willing to use it. Take a deep breath. Darren rushed into Mr. Weasley and Lucius's side. When Mr. Weasley seemed to be on the verge of losing money, he immediately pulled the two men away. He said helplessly, "If the two gentlemen fight again, I will sue Headmaster Dumbledore. I am a child, and I like to sue." Count yourself lucky. Lucius was carried by Darren, slightly shocked. And quietly a little proud. This is his son. If he hadn't been unable to recognize Darren now, it might have been Weasley who had been beaten by now. After he was put down by Darren, he was ready to go outside, but he was walking, he suddenly sneered, picked up a book from Ginny on the ground, and shoved it into Ginny's hand. "Take the little girl, take the good things your father gave you." Malfoy. Mr. Weasley was furious and wanted to chase after him. but was stopped by Mrs. Weasley. Enough. What else do you want? You just can't set a good example for your children. You've scared Darren. Mom, when Darren hit Draco Malfoy just now, he was also very strong. He single-handedly beat Malfoy to the ground, not injured yet, you see Daddy, lips are broken, Fred said excitedly. Darren looked at the child sympathetically. Sure enough, the next second, Mrs. Weasley took the book and slapped it on his head several times. You still talk nonsense. Talk nonsense. If Darren hadn't been for our family, he would have been so timid, simple, and kind, how could he have fought with people? And Arthur, the Malfoys are not easy to mess with. I don't know if Lockhart will be angry, after all, several children want him to go to class. Along the way, Mrs. Weasley was angrily lecturing Mr. Weasley, and by the way, Harry them. You should press Malfoy, what if Darren loses? These are two very different words from Mrs. Weasley. Ron thought Mrs. Weasley was very eccentric. But that made Harry and Hermione, and Ginny feel very right. It's just that just now, Darren didn't look like he was downwind, so they didn't think of this kind of operation for a while. I'm sorry, madam, that I had a fight on impulse, and probably affected the mood of Mr. Weasley and Mr. Malfoy the Great. It's all my fault. Ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, oh, boy, my little Darren baby, it's none of your business. Arthur, they're grown-ups, you don't have to feel sorry for them. Mrs. Weasley wiped her tears movingly, and she took Darren in her arms and sighed again. Why did she give birth to not Darren, but Ron? Episode 145, Nicole May appeared. Except, of course, Mrs. Weasley's touch. Naturally, there was also the shock of Harry and Ron. You still call Malfoy's dad Mr. Malfoy? Mr.? Have you forgotten that they still want you to drop out? Last year, Mr. Malfoy, because Darren beat Malfoy, came to school with his wife and forced Dumbledore to expel Darren. As a result, he finally learns that Darren is Harry's younger brother and changes his mind to make Malfoy apologize. Even because of this incident, the Malfoys lost their decision-making power over Hogwarts. However, I heard that Lucius Malfoy contacted many shareholders during the summer vacation and finally restored the decision-making power. That's why he was able to rush to Hogwarts and have nothing to do with Headmaster Dumbledore. It is said that the angry headmaster threw him out. And during this time, Malfoy was so arrogant, and it was also because of this matter. Of course, these are all other topics. Ron and Harry just thought it was incredible. Such a person, Darren still want to call him sir? Why can't you call sir? It's an honorific, isn't it? And although Mr. Malfoy was angry at the time and asked me to drop out of school, he actually just said that he wanted me to apologize and scare me. It was I myself who was so angry that I insisted on dropping out of school. Sorry brother, I didn't consider your feelings at the time. Ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding. I knew you didn't think about my feelings at the time, and you were sometimes particularly reckless, no worse than me and Ron. Next time, don't easily say that you have dropped out, if you really want to quit school. Then you say, you dropped out of school with your brother, we are brothers, how can your brother let you drop out of school alone? Harry patted himself on the chest and said with great righteousness. Ron laughed and said, how could it be? No one is willing to fire you too. He had just bought the Daily Prophet and saw today's news. Sure enough, Darren was on top of the headlines. Darren is now a celebrity too. He received Sir Merlin's first-class medal from Dumbledore. It's almost a foregone conclusion. Today's front-page headline was Lockhart going to teach at Hogwarts. Sign-off launch. But now Darren has grabbed the headlines. People are hotly debating whether Darren Porter's success represents the rise of the Potter family. However, some of Harry's fans believe that it was probably made with Harry's help. I believe that those who have brains do not care about them at all. If Harry could make it, why didn't he patent it himself? Harry had just seen those so-called sober speakers almost calling out to Paggy to buy some sobering agent for these people to send over. But was stopped by Darren. Okay brother, it's not fun to talk to these people, and I don't care about these. If my brother wanted this invention, I would have given it to him directly. It's a pity that my brother doesn't want these things at all, always keep his own heart, and I want to thank my brother for setting a good example for me. Ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding. Oh, when will your brothers be like Darren and Harry? Then I will be blinded by death. Mrs. Weasley said softly. No, Mom, in order not to let you die, we are ready to go in the opposite direction of them. Yeah, Mom, how can you talk nonsense? Mom, it's not right for you to hit people like this. You just said that Daddy and Big Malfoy were fighting, Fred and George said deadly. Because of their ridicule, by the time they got to the Broken Cauldron bar, everyone was calm. At the Leaky Cauldron, they need to transport everything they bought back. The Granger family also needs to leave the Broken Cauldron bar and go to the Muggle world outside the Cauldron bar. Before leaving, Mr. Weasley wanted to ask what the Muggle bus station looked like, but when he saw Mrs. Weasley's face, he quickly closed his mouth. Almost instantaneously, Darren's summer vacation life was over. On the last night, Mrs. Weasley made them a big meal. Also shared a big cake, which put them back to sleep. When Darren went upstairs, he saw that Ginny wanted to talk to him again and again, as if he wanted to say something. He followed up and wanted to ask carefully, and was coaxed away by Ginny. He suspected it was the diary thing. Because he also saw Lucius stuff the book into Ginny's hand just like the original. But Ginny didn't tell him, and he could only act as if he didn't know, allowing events to unfold at will. In fact, even if Ginny had told him, he would have pretended not to know and let things go on. But it can be a bit ruinous. Thankfully, I didn't say it. Early the next morning. They got up very early because there was a whole bunch of stuff to pack. Mrs. Weasley fired several times, which allowed them to sit safely in the car. But as soon as they got to the car, they were forced to all get out again. Because there were 2 elderly people coming. These are 2 old men who look very old. It's like living for hundreds of years. When Mr. Weasley saw them, he immediately stopped the car and said in shock, "This is Mr. Flamel and his wife. How did they come here?" Harry and Ron, the twin brothers, all looked straight at Darren. Because they all knew that Darren seemed to be about to be passed on to the Flamels. "Hello guys, we're looking for Darren, Darren Porter." The eyes of the 2 old men patrolled the Weasleys. Who made Darren also redhead? "Hello, I'm Darren, Darren Porter." Darren walked out of the crowd with some trepidation, his green eyes shining with uneasiness. Obviously aware of Nicole Flamel's intentions, but a little reluctant to accept it. "Oh, kid, don't worry, would you like to go out with us? By the way, Weasley. You can go to the station first, Darren, and I'll deliver it to Hogwarts myself, you don't have to care." Nicole Flame, although smiling, was still very majestic. Mr. Weasley had to say yes again and again. And make sure they don't bother Nicola May. Episode 146, Can I Give It to My Brother? After saying goodbye to Harry, Darren followed the Nicole May and his wife through the spacious London streets. He had long recognized the old man as the man in the scene card. No wonder Nicole May suddenly wanted to recognize him, it turned out to be because of this. Although he had guessed it before. "Boy, didn't you ask me anything?" Nicole May walked beside Darren with his hands behind his back, posing with a majestic expression. Darren rolled his eyes. He had also seen the old man fall to the ground and look like a wretch, so he was not afraid at all. However, he should not remember the situation in the scene card at this time, so he still has to show some awe. So he was a little silent before he said, "You should want me to be the heir. Maybe you heard Headmaster Dumbledore say I'm smart. Plus I once defended the Philosopher's Stone, so you decided to give me a chance?" he asked hesitantly. The expression on his face was somewhat reluctant. Apparently he didn't want to agree to be Nicolome's heir at all, but he had to come along. This made Nicole Mayer laugh angrily. Knowing what a cherished opportunity it was to be his heir, this guy still looked so unwilling. Co-author, this guy thinks he only has one Philosopher's Stone? Only thinking about immortality? Nicole May had no idea that Darren was reloading, and he thought that Darren didn't like the effect of his Philosopher's Stone immortal being, so he would do so. "I have invented a lot in my life, and although the Philosopher's Stone is my most famous invention, many things in the wizarding world have my involvement. So, do you know what a valuable opportunity you get?" Nicole May spoke haughtily, waiting for Darren to come and please him. Once upon a time when they saw him, they courted him, and as a result the little cub saw him twice, and both times they sought him out of the ordinary. Nicole. Perenelle rolled his eyes at Nicole May. She still wanted to talk to this child. Why was this old man pretending? Nicole May waved her hand at her to keep her from interfering, and she sighed and looked at Darren with pity. This old man is just getting weirder. Pleases him, he gets angry, and if he doesn't please him, he gets angry too. Don't know what options Darren will have? Both options will be provoked by Nicole. Hope Darren can afford Nicole Flamel's dismount, right? In fact, Nicole May had not thought of giving Darren a chance before. Who made Darren cold to him all the time, or he spoke to this little cub first? This little cub was not at all as well behaved as in the spiritual world. Perenelle next to him sighed. This old man is so old, and his temper is not small. She looked at Darren. Darren was watching them at this moment, when suddenly he bowed deeply to the 2 men. Perenelle shook his head. This child is not as simple as Nicola May said that he compromised so quickly. Obviously because I wanted to learn those things. Even Nicole May frowned. Obviously, the Darren he saw in the spiritual world should not be such a performance. Just when the 2 people were a little unhappy, they heard Darren hesitate to say, "Of course, Mr. and Mrs. are very powerful people, so can you replace me as an heir? I want my brother to get this chance. I'm just an ordinary, probably well-educated kid. But my brother is the savior, he should be your heir. I don't think I am qualified. Ding, father plus 80, ding, father plus 70. Don't you know what LeMay represents? Nicole May was silent for a moment before asking. Little did he know that Darren would change his attitude because he wanted them to replace the heir with Harry. Although in the eyes of many people, this is a small thing. But in the eyes of the Nicole Mayers, this is a very big thing. They have lived too long and seen too many intrigues. How never I have ever seen such a precious opportunity to give up to someone else's child. I know what the last name LeMay represents, Paige told me, but I still don't think I'm worthy. The brother who saved the world did not get such an opportunity, but I, who did nothing, got this opportunity, and I felt unfair to my brother. Ding, father plus 80, ding, father plus 80. The Nichols were even more silent. Their throats are a little blocked. I even want to ask this child, what is unfairness? Is it fair that he lived in an orphanage for 11 years? Because he didn't save the world, he was asked by Harry's fans not to inherit the Potter family. Did he ever think about fairness? Because he was Harry Potter's younger brother, he entered Slytherin and was scolded by many people who did not know the truth for being a deep asshole in his heart. He did not mention how much unfair treatment he had suffered because of Harry Potter, but felt that all kinds of cherished opportunities should be given to Harry Potter. If the Lamey family had children like this, they would not have been wiped out after they had been angry and closed for decades. You think you're the heir by us? Joke, I can't find any heirs, we're just here to tell you that you have no hope. Nicole Flamel thought about the fate of his family and looked at Darren with a bit of love and hate. He said unhappily. Glared at by his wife. Perennial almost smoked him. She thought it was Darren. Who else was this old man looking for? Looking for Merlin? Nicole May lifted her head hard. Darren reminded him of unhappy things. Can't you still put some harsh words? He just wanted this Darren to know that he didn't say no or refuse. Darren skimmed his lips. Nicole May still needs to say yes to his face? Obviously, he just wanted him to be the heir, and because he kept recommending Harry, he was uncomfortable. I want to teach him a lesson and let him know that opportunities are not so casually rejected. It would be better if he apologized. But in fact, this is another temptation. Darren laughed, he bowed to the Nicole and his wife, and then said relievedly, "Thank you Mr. Flamel for coming to tell me the news. I'm sorry to take up your time, then I'll leave first." Episode 147, Suddenly Explodes the Street. Darren turned and left. The firm back gave Nicole May a stunned look. How can this be? There is not even a little nostalgia? He decided to count to 10 and give this little troublemaker a chance. As soon as he turned around within 10 years, he decided to keep Darren the heir, but he had counted to 15, and Darren hadn't turned his head, or even disappeared on the street corner. Don't hurry up and catch up. Perennial kicked him angrily. Nicole May smiled, and the two of them rushed to chase Darren with an old stride. Darren Porter. Nicole May called Darren's name from behind. Darren showed a puzzled expression. In fact, looking at Nicole Flamel's expression, he was about to laugh silly. I knew the old man had to catch up. Ding, sensing that there is a scene of the Holy Father system playing around the host, now start releasing the task. Rush to Perennial's side, block her in front of her, and shout, "Sir, madam, hurry up, it's a muggle gun." Ding, after completing the task, get the illusion of rewarding Perennial. Will the host receive the task? Darren looked around. Sure enough, just as he was paying attention, he noticed a man pulling a gun out of his pocket. It was a man who looked extremely frustrated, and it was clear that this man would attack later. But I don't know if it was for the Nicole and his wife. Darren felt it shouldn't be. This is more likely to be an accident. But that doesn't prevent him from taking up the task. Pick up. In Darren's gaze, the man suddenly began to shoot at Perennial. Darren immediately blocked in front of Perennial, blood splashing on his body, and he cried anxiously, "Sir, lady, go fast, this is a muggle gun." Ding, mission accomplished. Congratulations to the host for getting Perennial's illusion. Perennial's delusion. Perennial always felt like seeing you as he had seen the little uncle who raised her with her own hands. He died in a muggle war, and Perennial tried many things to save his life. Galier. Perennial muttered to himself. Peaceful. She hugged Darren and called out Galier's name in a nostalgic tone. Hurry up. Obstacles. Nicole Flamel was also startled. He had no idea that someone would shoot at Perennial. According to Perennial's character, she might not really resist and let the bullet take her away. Because she had lived long enough. Who knew that Darren was actually in her way? Look at the blood on the child's body. And that pale face. Nicole Flamel was furious, and he used almost all the spells on the muggle that he had first thought of. The consequence of this was that he almost blew up the entire street. The Ministry of Magic's Aurors soon arrived on the scene. Most of them formed a circle, and their wands were all aimed at Nicole Flamelma. A small number of them began to rescue muggles. They didn't know what was happening here, but they knew that the wizard in front of them had blown up the whole street. Could it be a dark wizard? Or is it a Death Eater? Hello, I'm Darren Porter, and Mr. Flamel is not wrong. After seeing Nicole May being surrounded, Darren quickly broke away from Perenel's arms and said hello with a pale face. Just now here muggles attacked Mr. Nicholm, that's why there is such a thing. But I see that Mr. LeMay did not kill, and you can tell the truth from the mouths of those people. Darren Porter? Harry Potter's younger brother? Invented the latest antidote, Lord Merlin first-class medal winner? A female auror suddenly asked. Darren nodded, the expression on his face even paler. Their eyes relaxed slightly, then at Nicole Flamel. Nicole May threw a document at them. They hurriedly lowered their wands. I'm sorry, I didn't think you were really Mr. Nicholom. Frightened Mr. LeMay. Yes. Is Mr. Flamel trying to protect Darren Porter? Nicole Flamel frowned and interrupted them. He walked next to Dallowin and said helplessly, well, let someone treat your wounds, I really don't know what you want to think. He glared at Darren as he spoke. This stupid boy is so stupid that he uses his body to block the eyes of others. By the way, he remembered that he had investigated Darren. Darren seems to have saved a schoolgirl, and also used his body to block people in front of people. Oh, what a kind and stupid little cub. Is that thing in your hand a stick? Nicole Mayo was not relieved and suddenly asked angrily. Darren was startled, and his face instantly became paler. Apparently, he was most afraid of being scolded by his elders. He pressed his lips and said with some guilt, I'm sorry sir, it's all my fault, don't be angry. What do you apologize for? You. Nicole Flamel spun around in place, and he didn't know what he was angry about. He scolded Darren, and Darren had already apologized to him, but he just couldn't feel angry. It was only when he saw Darren's green eyes looking at him with concern that he suddenly understood what he was angry about. He was angry at how this child could not take life seriously. For the sake of two people who were about to die of old age, did he dare to exchange his own life for his own life? How could such a young child be so stupid? Perenelle, you talk about him. He couldn't bear to teach Darren any longer, so he had to give Darren to Perenelle. However, when he saw Perenelle, he found that Perenelle was holding Darren and crying. What was she calling Gallo? By the way, Perenelle's uncle who died early was named Galier. Also died in the shooting. Perenelle thought of Darren as Gallo for normal. And Darren wasn't angry. He was soothing and patting Perenelle on the shoulder and said in a gentle tone, don't be sad, if you don't mind, then you will treat me as Gallo. I don't like to be treated as someone else, but if it makes you happy, I have no problem. Ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 80, ding, father plus 50. Once again a large sum of the father's value was credited. Darren comforted Perenelle even harder. It is said that to let the other party treat him as someone else, there is also the value of the father. Now people are very touched by the point of very low awe. Episode 148, Let him call uncle? LeMay, he's Galier, I can feel. He is Galier, he must be the reincarnation of Gallo. He's now called Darren. Perenelle sobbed. More than 600 years ago. She also has a little uncle. The little uncle raised her by his own hands. She had always treated her little uncle as a father. But while she was doing the experiment, the little uncle was involved in a war. He died in the middle of an arrow that gave people a shield. He thought that this little injury was nothing to the wizard. But he was almost shot as a hedgehog. The moment Perenelle saw Galier's body, she simply could not accept that her kind little uncle would die. Nor can she accept the death of Gallo, whom she regarded as her father. At that time, she was fanatical about studying ways to bring the dead back to life. The idea of the philosopher's stone was something she and Nicholom came up with together. Only at that time, she was thinking of resurrecting the little uncle. Who knew that the philosopher's stone had no effect at all, it would only make people immortal. Perenelle collapsed at one point. Fortunately, she was pregnant with a child, and she slowly survived. After all these years, Nicole May thought that his wife must have released Gallo's death. Who knew that he was holding Darren and calling out to Galier? He even thinks that Darren is the reincarnation of Galier. Perenelle, you are unfair to Darren like this, he will not be the reincarnation of anyone. He's just him, you think, he's going to be our heir, you call him Gallo, what would it be like for others to hear it? Nicole Flamel pulled his wife aside, looked at the auror who was treating Darren, and felt that he needed to make an effort to reason with his wife. But Perenelle ignored him at all. She swore and said, I understand all this, but I can tell you 100% that Darren is the reincarnation of Gallo. Although he has forgotten now, I can raise him from the new, and you can think of Darren as your heir. If you don't want to think of Darren as your heir, you think of him as my uncle, you choose. Your uncle? Nicole May almost went mad. He didn't want to be hundreds of years old and think of a little fart as an uncle. In order not to be confused, Nicole May pulled Perenelle to do a lot of ideological work. Yet Perenelle did not listen at all. All she wanted now was to go back to her little uncle. Just when Nicole May thought he really wanted to have an extra uncle, he blurted out, "Okay, you just call him little uncle, and then people will definitely joke that he is called uncle by two old men and women in their 60s. Maybe he will feel that he has a deep heart and deliberately calculates us. If you didn't save him once, wouldn't you still want to force him to drown himself out of those gossip?" This sentence stunned Perenelle. Nicole May saw that there was a play, and he quickly continued, "And even if he is the reincarnation of Galier, he doesn't know who he is now. You don't want him to feel like a substitute, right? You don't want your little uncle to be reincarnated by you, right? He just saved you, won't you forget it so old and confused? Look at the blood on that child, Perenelle, it was Darren who saved you, not Galil who saved you. Promise me, at least don't be in front of a child, and think of him as someone else," Nicole May said wearily. Perenelle opened her mouth, as if she had suddenly figured out something. "Have you figured it out?" Nicole May asked with a sigh of relief. Perenelle nodded vigorously. "I know what you mean, you're right, after reincarnation it's already two people. My wish was to be Galil's mother in the afterlife to take care of him, and now it is the same. I divided between Ching Darren and Galil, and I was just too happy before. Also, now that Galil Darren is back, I'm going to take good care of him, I'm going to watch him get married and have kids." I finally waited. Perenelle's excited fantasies. Nicole Flamel. Is this called understood? It felt even stranger. But the good guys changed Darren's generation. At least he didn't have to call Uncle Darren all day. At more than 600 years old, if he were to call a little cub little uncle, he would feel that he would want to end his life tomorrow. However, this is also a good thing. His strong desire to make Darren the heir was really just his idea. Perenelle initially just wanted him to hand over all his knowledge and then die with her as soon as possible. Now that she's accepted Darren, maybe she'd be willing to live with him longer? He was not willing to go on a great adventure so early. Especially after seeing Darren, he also wanted to train Darren and then see what heights he could reach. He also wanted to bring children to his heir. He was actually just over 600 years old. The older you get, the more you yearn for affection. Once he and the children of the real Lamy family never thought of it that way. Those children, who had their own ambitions, had been kicked out of their homes early by him to stand on their own. Only Darren made him think like that. He thought fiercely inside. He turned his head to look at Darren. The more I look at it, the more I like it. Sure enough, Darren was related to him and Perenelle. Of course, it would have been better if Perenelle hadn't thought it was her little uncle. Watching Perenelle painfully wipe the blood splashed on Darren's face, Nicole May skimmed his lips. Oh, really be a son? None of them had been so good for him. He complained silently. Then he saw Darren smile at Perenelle with a well-behaved smile. Nicole Flamel pursed her lips again. Just now Perenelle asked you to be her little uncle and treat you as someone else. Smirk what? He's the little cub's teacher, right? The street bombing was judged by the Ministry of Magic to be justified in self-defense. If someone else did this, the Ministry of Magic would definitely arrest people for a period of time and fine them for excessive defense. But Nicole Flamel's fame was too great. Even the Ministry of Magic did not want to provoke. Knowing that Nicole May didn't mean to blow up the street, they sent Nicola May's congratulations out of here. However, for the sake of safety, they advised Nicole May to return to France as soon as possible. After they found out the truth, Nicole May had better stay in his own country. If Nicole May died here, they would be in big trouble. Episode 149, Lockhart Oblivion Charm. Darren was sent to Hogwarts by the order of the Ministry of Magic. Nicole Flamel and his wife were still in the Ministry of Magic, and the Ministry of Magic did not think it would be safe for them to go out at this time. It also hinted at them that if they took Darren with them, Darren might still have an accident. This made the two of them endure the pain and hand over Darren. When it was sent, Hogwarts had just started the dinner. Darren slipped over quietly, without attracting the attention of the rest of the Slytherin classmates who were sitting. But when he sat down, he still made many Slytherins cast their eyes. When they were in the lounge, they didn't see the guy at all. I thought he was going to find Harry Potter. After all, everyone knew that Harry Potter drove a flying car. They also thought Darren was either in the car or just waiting for Harry. Who knew that it suddenly came to the table? Seeing the look of no worry on his face again, it was obvious that he did not know anything about Harry Potter. Because of the jealousy in his heart, none of the Slytherin told Darren about Harry. Darren was still waiting for someone to tell him about Harry, and then make a stroke of the Holy Father's value, who knew that no one had told him. He rubbed the corners of his forehead. The headache seems to have to be found out on its own. So he immediately looked at the Gryffindor table, and then he frowned tightly. Brother. He looked around puzzled, his face deeply worried. Cassandra knocked on the table next to him, wanting him to sit up straight and wait a little longer. Who knew that Darren ignored her, that he sat without seeing, that he stood up in full view of everyone? Darren, what are you doing? Cassandra whispered, and she reached out and pulled on Ladeline's robe. Darren looked at her palely, as if something terrible had happened, and asked in a trembling tone, Miss Cassandra, do you know where my brother has gone? Is there something wrong with him? Where is he? Can you tell me? Please. You can do whatever you want, can you tell me? Brother can't play a prank and not come to school, he must be in trouble, who knows where he is, ding, father plus 30, ding, father plus 50, ding, father plus 40, ding, a large sum of the Holy Father's value begins. Darren looked even paler. Cassandra looked at his expression and felt intense unhappiness in her heart. So she shook her head and said she didn't know where Harry Potter was. Darren was silent. He even stood there a little sluggishly, as if abandoned by the whole world. Ding, father plus 50, ding, father plus 80, ding, father plus 70, ding, ding, sensing that there is a scene of the Holy Father system playing around the host, now release as a temporary task, use the silent appearance of a magic riot, and break through the wounds on the body, and after 3 minutes, be persuaded to pretend to regain sanity. And said, I'm sorry professor, fellow students, I let you be frightened, I was wrong. I am willing to accept any punishment, only to ask you to save my brother. Ding, get Lockhart's Oblivion charm after the mission is completed. Will the host receive the task? Pick up. Darren almost burst out laughing. Another interesting task. He blinked, and a terrifying power gradually spread around him. Cut, what are you worried about in that blindness, Scarhead? Harry Potter certainly wasn't dead, and he should be very happy by now. He and Ron made headlines. They drove up to heaven. Malfoy didn't notice Darren's state, he thought Darren was worried, and after thinking about it, he couldn't help but complain. Who made him this guy's brother? Yes. Driving in the sky is definitely Weasley's handiwork, what can they do? Salvation is mainly something to do, the professors will certainly be anxious, you still look at yourself. Ah, Darren, how did your chest bleed, Professor? Professor, the dean is coming. Darren, Darren, what's wrong with you? Hurry up, hurry up. The Slytherin Academy student screamed. Just now, Darren's chest suddenly blamed blood. With Darren's pale face and dark eyes, it looked like he was going to die. Freak them out. Snape almost rushed down from the top of the teacher's bench. He pressed Darren's shoulder. Potter. You're crazy. Just relax. Porter. Darren. Calm down. Dumbledore, Darren magic riot Darren. Harry Potter is not dead, he is all right, you are no longer calm. The auditorium is going to be blown up by you. Darren didn't answer, he was watching the system's timing. 3 minutes. Darren Porter. The auditorium was blown up by you, and it is likely that some students will die, would you like to? Snape's voice came into his ears. This is it. Darren immediately put away the silence. The power that had just spread over suddenly disappeared without a trace. This greatly relieved Professor McGonagall, who was preparing to start evacuating the crowd. Darren? You okay? Dumbledore walked over solemnly. In fact, he was deeply relieved in his heart. The magic riot that blew up the auditorium was nothing. Hogwarts is recoverable. The student couldn't have been hurt either, because there was him here. But Darren could turn into a squib. And if the power in his body was released, it could even kill Darren. Professor. I'm sorry. It was my fault that I almost hurt all the students, you can kill me, just ask if you can save my brother. Flying cars. Ron is on top too. They may die. Darren's voice grew quieter, and finally he sat down on the ground with red eyes and a breakdown. Ding, congratulations to the host for getting Lockhart's Oblivion charm. Lockhart's Oblivion charm, adapted by Lockhart himself. The Oblivion charm is very clever, it does not leave the wizard with the slightest memory, and it is as clean as a blank piece of paper. Maybe, you can try it yourself, maybe there is an unexpected surprise. This? Why should he use it on himself? What a broken system, have the ability to tell him the reason directly. What happens when he uses the Oblivion charm on himself? He wouldn't have forgotten his identity as a traverser, would he? Forget it, wait until the day you have time. I hope that when he experiments, he will not fall into a cycle of forgetting everything. Potter. Drink, cough. Almost forgot. It's still performing. Darren looked up in a daze, and in front of him was a bottle of potion. Darren shook his head, just trying to pretend that Harry wasn't coming, that he wasn't drinking. It was poured directly into his mouth, by Snape. Cough cough cough. Darren coughed as he felt his consciousness fade away. In his heart, he scolded Snape for not being a man, and added sleeping pills to the donkey. Ding, father plus 80, ding, father plus 90, ding, father plus 80, ding, this. It's not that it's incomprehensible. He could have another drink. Episode 150, please, please. Severus. You can't go against the student's will, oh, poor little Darren. Professor McGonagall muttered at the back of Snape's delivery to Len's infirmary. Well, Minerva, Severus is just too worried about Darren. The boy almost tossed himself away. Dumbledore took off his glasses and wiped his eyes. What a wonderful feeling. He sighed deeply. I don't think so. Harry didn't know anything about Darren at all. If he had half the affection Darren had for him, he should have known how worried Darren would be if he did this. Professor McGonagall pursed her lips. She was very angry. Just half an hour ago, Harry Potter was driving a small green car through most of the country. Her office had received hundreds of letters, all asking if this was their privilege for Harry Potter. In the future, will their children be able to go to school like this? And that's just her here. Dumbledore should be more serious there. Minerva, children make mistakes, and only in mistakes can they slowly become a perfect person. I don't deny that the news that Harry hadn't appeared was a big irritant to Darren, but what happened to Darren was more that he had been seriously injured before he came. The Ministry of Magic, who had just told me, had saved Mrs. Nickleby and suffered a gunshot wound. They didn't know much about healing, and because Darren insisted on coming to school, he did only a simple treatment and sent him to Hogwarts. They were going to have Bobby treat Darren again. So can't blame all Harry, he's just a kid too. Dumbledore said with a smile. But that's also the inducement, Dumbledore, you're always right, but I still think Harry and Ron should be taught a lesson. Professor McGonagall insisted. Yes, Minerva, it's up to you to decide. I'm going to see Darren now and then write back to a couple of important people. Of course, if Harry they come back, you remember to inform me, and now you preside over the sorting house first. Those kids were already scared. If Darren had known that he had frightened these children, he would have been very upset and would not have wanted to go. Well, alas. Professor McGonagall walked toward the auditorium. Dumbledore waited for her to leave before walking quickly to the school doctor's office. At the door of the school doctor's office, Snape was sitting there with his head in his hand. He looked even more sinister. Dumbledore's footsteps were heard. He seemed to want to show a mocking smile, but very unsuccessfully. It's more like an expression that wants to kill someone. Severus, take it easy. Darren has nothing to do. Oh, there is nothing wrong with the gunshot wound he suffered before, and now he is hard to open the wound, and the magic riot. Emotional breakdown. If it weren't for the fact that the fool was still worried about being hurt by others, and pulled back his sanity, he might have died like that. Lily is dead, if the child she left behind dies. Dumbledore, you tell me, what is the significance of all these years? Snape's voice trembled, and Dumbledore understood how he felt. Because he had that time too. Darren is not dead, he is very good now, and when he wakes up, he can jump around alive and Lily has 2 children, and Harry has a pair of green eyes, very much like Lily. Dumbledore stopped talking helplessly under Snape's foolish gaze. With Darren in front of you, who would look at a pair of eyes? Then you're here with you. No, I'm going to wait for Harry Potter now, as Dumbledore said, maybe I should get close to that child. Dumbledore was dumbfounded. He wanted to refuse, but Snape was a professor at Hogwarts, and he couldn't have not seen Harry. Maybe you can hide from the first year, but you can't hide from the 15th. Well, Severus, don't be too harsh on a child. I remember you and James once had a wonderful campus life too. Cough, there is blood on your clothes, it should be rubbed on Darren's body. Dumbledore interrupted himself, and he quickly changed the subject, pointing to the blood stains on Snape's clothes. Ahem, stupid little cub. Snape evaporated the blood with a wave of his wand and strode out of the infirmary. Harry felt that he had been too miserable today. Early in the morning, he had to face the fate of Darren being taken away by Nicola Flamel. They arrived at King's Cross Station. As a result, the Weasleys went in, and he and Ron couldn't get in. When they pushed the luggage cart and rushed to the ground, they were smashed to the ground. To catch up with Hogwarts. He and Ron made a bold decision. They decided to fly to Hogwarts in their car. According to Ron, in an emergency, underage wizards can also use magic. So the two of them happily drove the car and flew up. The car can occasionally be invisible. At first, the two of them were particularly excited, because there were beautiful clouds everywhere, like a fairyland. Harry felt that if Darren had seen it, he would have liked it very much. So he and Ron, while eating toffee, looked at the clouds. They could even imagine how jealous Fred and George would be when they drove up the grass at Hogwarts. Darren might be a little angry, but he was more worried about them. As long as they were safe, Darren wouldn't say anything. So what they may see is a scene of envy and praise. It's just that it's the initial feeling. Over time, they find themselves miserable. Because the toffee is too much to eat, there is no water to drink. They were drenched in sweat and thirsty. They began to miss life on the train. But why can't you get into the 9 3/4 platform? After another hour or so, they were even more irritable. Even the car began to shake faintly. The sky is getting darker. The car became more and more powerless. Harry and Ron's hearts grew hairy. Until. Looks like we're almost at Hogwarts, Ron said in a hoarse voice. It's just that the car starts to shake constantly, as if it is going to fall apart. Please. Let's go down. They began to keep coaxing the car, trying to get it clean. Help. It's almost here. Help. It's going to fall. Ron, hurry up and let it fly. Please. Please. Episode 151, Beware of that tree. Their pleas were clearly useless. The car went off. The front of the car leaned down, and they began to fall, crashing straight into the walls of Hogwarts. No. Ron cried out in horror. He turned the steering wheel vigorously, trying to get the car to turn. Finally, it may have been his sincerity that impressed the car. It finally turned around and fell in the direction of the garden. Watch out for that tree. Ron tapped the engine with his wand, trying to get the car up from scratch, and heard Harry's screams, even more anxious. They even began to plead with heaven. Give them another chance, and maybe they will have another way to get to Hogwarts. For example, Darren was also at Hogwarts, and if he and Ron hadn't gone, Darren would have asked the headmaster for help. There were also Ron's 3 older brothers and 1 younger sister. Oh, my God. Why would they want to go crazy in a car? It's just that their regret doesn't work. Finally. Click. The sound of cars colliding with branches reached their ears. The car slammed into the ground. Harry's head slammed into the car window, and he was knocked out of a bag the size of a golf ball. Ron couldn't say who was worse. Because his wand was broken. Mom will kill me, Ron said with a bitter face. Harry just wanted to comfort him, saying that if he went to Hogwarts, he would be able to repair his wand. But before he could say anything, something slammed into the car. What's going on? They struggled to sit well, and from the car window they saw that the thick branches of the python outside began to smash on the car, on the roof, on the window. Ron and Harry almost thought they were going to die. However, the car started with a bang. Reverse. They shouted in surprise. The car quickly retreated, and they were overjoyed, looking at the branch that still wanted to hit them, and almost laughed. However, at this time, the car also endured to the extreme. It slammed open the car door, and Harry and Ron were ejected. By the time they reacted, they were already lying on the grass. Boom boom. There were several more sounds of heavy objects falling to the ground, and Harry saw that their salute was also thrown out. Hedwig flew out of the open cage. It flapped its wings on Harry's head in anger, screamed angrily, and flew towards the castle without turning its head. As for the car, it was full of large and small pits, and it rushed into the depths of the forbidden forest, with scales all over its body. Come back! Ron roared. He wielded a wand that had almost broken in 2, trying to chase the car. Unfortunately, it only spewed out 2 streams of exhaust gas and disappeared from his sight. Can you believe that we are so unlucky? Ron said in disbelief. So many trees, how did they hit the tree that would hit people? Let's go to the castle first. Harry got up exhausted. It wasn't the victory he had imagined, and if Darren saw it, he would cry. They dragged their luggage and walked cold and hungry to the castle. Finally, they came outside the auditorium. They looked inside through the crack in the door of the auditorium. Professor McGonagall was calling out one name after another, with the sorting hat strap on top of their heads, sorting it out. Ron breathed a sigh of relief. Because he saw that Ginny was still standing inside the freshmen, it was obviously not her turn yet. What only made him a little unclear was that Ginny's face was a mixture of fear and worry, a mixture of anger and tension. Could it be Fred that they frightened her? I dare say Ginny will definitely be sorted into Gryffindor. Harry nodded. He was a little absent-minded, for he was watching Edward Lockhart, dressed in the green of his bag, talking to Professor Freeway, who had a somewhat ugly expression. Hagrid was taking a big gulp of wine, his face filled with some concern. And also. Wait a minute. Neither Dumbledore nor Snape were there. Dumbledore was Harry's headmaster, the greatest white wizard in the world. Last year, Harry and Darren protected the Philosopher's Stone with the help of the headmaster. Yes, he felt that everything he did, the headmaster knew. He just let things go and see what decisions he would make. Harry felt that this was the real great man. As for Snape. As soon as Harry mentioned him, he thought of his greasy hair, his hooked nose, his disgusted eyes, and the ironic smile he had every time he saw him. Last year, Harry once thought Snape was a bad guy. It wasn't until the end that he learned that it was Snape who had been protecting him. Dumbledore also said that Snape had been saved by his father. Despite this, Harry still didn't like the professor. He felt that the professor didn't like him either. Where did Snape go? He asked in confusion that Snape should be sitting in the faculty seat. After all, he was the dean of Slytherin. Speaking of Slytherin, Harry immediately thought of Darren. He hurried over to the Slytherin table. But the Slytherins had their backs on him, and he didn't know which one was Darren, and decided to explain it to Darren until tomorrow. Alas, how nice it would have been if Snape hadn't done it. Harry sighed. He was Snape's most hated student, and of course hoped that Snape would better never come. Maybe he's injured? Maybe he's late? Or maybe he's been fired? Harry said excitedly, because he deliberately targeted the students. Maybe he's waiting for you. A voice that dragged out the tune sounded behind them. It was Snape's voice. He continued, maybe poor Professor Snape is waiting for you two to explain what you have done. Harry turned. Professor Snape, dressed in black, was standing behind him. Those eyes were staring at him murderously, as if the next second would give him a death curse. Of course, perhaps it was the wand that Snape was clutching tightly in his hand that gave him this illusion. But Harry swore that if the killing was not illegal, Professor Snape in front of him might bring him to the ground. Episode 152, Snape's Memories. Flying lessons are also a fun one for first-year students. But Snape didn't like it at all. Because he hates flying. Also because his love rival James is the darling of flight. So when he looks at the sport, he always thinks of that guy. Every time he thinks about it, it makes him feel extremely bad. The guy who snatched Lily away and hadn't taken care of her yet was a jerk. Fortunately, he later became the Dean of Slytherin. After watching Slytherin beat Gryffindor every time, he actually liked the sport a little. Especially looking at the Gryffindor cubs gritting their teeth, each time gave him a little bit of comfort. Sure enough, watching Gryffindor eat was the source of his happiness. But this happiness turned into unhappiness after seeing Darren Porter follow those people to play with brooms. Scold. What about Lily, not Potter's species? The Potters are naturally the darlings of flight, and Darren should be no exception. Sure enough, he was standing above the castle inadvertently to see Darren grab the broom. And Harry Potter. The two of them were indeed darlings of flight. Snape almost spewed a puff of gas from inside his nose. My heart was sour to the extreme. James Potter, is that good? Isn't that a flying fool? How did he let Lily take a fancy to her? Snape couldn't figure it out. He felt that Lily was just separated from him, and he shouldn't look at Potter's megalomaniac. He sometimes wondered if Potter had given Lily a charm. He was thinking about it when he suddenly saw the old man in the Longbottoms who was flying on a broom, and then Darren followed suit. Snape pulled out his wand almost subconsciously. It wasn't until he saw Darren fall to the ground that he put away his wand. Look, Darren's little cub was infected with the reckless gene of Potter. Snape smiled sarcastically. He also saw the Harry Potter guy and also showed off a piece of his flying skills. Ahem, megalomaniac Potter. Snape grinned and left from the castle. He didn't think he should watch this boring flying lesson. He returned to the auditorium angrily. Then I heard the news that Harry Potter was going to duel with Draco. That little ability of Harry Potter can beat Draco? Isn't that looking for a call? He was about to listen to Harry Potter's confident speech and let him feel the joy in his heart. Then I heard Harry Potter complaining to the cub and was angry that he asked the cub to copy the rules of the house. Oh, if it weren't for him, this little cub would have been punished for Harry Potter. He went up and began to ridicule. Looking at the frantic expression on Potter's face, Snape felt better. He also saw that Potter wanted to hit him. Gryffindor attacked the professor must be deducted 50 points. However, before he could even start, he was pulled away by the little cub with his sleeve. Looking at the shocked expressions of many professors and students along the way, Snape appeared to be silent, but in fact he had already flawed for his wand and decided to beat this reckless little ghost. Who gave him the courage to grab a dean and run like this? Perhaps his eyes finally frightened the little cub, who finally released his paws. He was slightly happy in his heart. At least this Potter cub knows how to look at people's faces, and when they leave school, they should not starve to death. He was slightly happy to think of Harry Potter, who could not see people's faces, carrying a marijuana bag, and going to the street to ask for food. The beautiful scene almost made him laugh. Professor McGonagall has arranged your confinement, he looked at the cub and said. For this reason, I also saw the guilty expression in the eyes of the little cub Lu Ying. He turned and left. Avoided those eyes. It looked like it had run away. Damn it. He was tricked by Quirrell. The guy led him to the Forbidden Forest, and he ran around empty, finding nothing. A grinning Snape returned to the basement. He vowed not to let him find it, otherwise. He suddenly froze in place. Because he saw Quirrell at the door of his office, and Darren was talking and laughing. That little fool was defenseless. It was as if he hadn't seen the wand in Quirrell's hand at all. What are you doing here? Snape snapped. He raised his wand. Could it be that Quirrell wants to tackle this little cub first? Harry Potter's younger brother. Damn it. Probably because of seeing him appear, Quirrell left immediately. Furious, he dragged the cub into the office. If he had come late today, would the little cub have died? Maybe even worse, like the Lombards? Confinement? Right. He remembered that he had indeed let this little cub come over and confine. He was a little annoyed. He should be waiting here. Who knew that if he didn't check for a while, he was lured away by Quirrell? Okay. The cub is still alive. Confinement was pleasant. The cub has only now begun to copy the rules of the house. He knew that this little cub had forgotten about the punishment of the court rules. Otherwise you wouldn't be so ignorant and follow Harry Potter to Gryffindor for dinner. Of course, even if you copy it, you may have to go. Stupid little cubs. How could he possibly take care of it? Hurry up and eat, and roll when you're done. Just go to sleep. All day long I knew that following Harry Potter's ass, the food was not good, and it should be malnourished. He thought of grading his homework. Watch the cubs go out. Thinking that Harry Potter had said today that he was going to duel with Malfoy, he guessed that the little cub must have wanted to find Harry Potter. Worried that he will meet Quirrell on the way. Snape's obscure decision to follow along. Who knew about the Harry Potter team? Haha, Draco didn't even show up. Also reported them to Filch? How could he not have thought of such a good idea? Sure, don't face, or Malfoy did it out. He was about to show up and then give Gryffindor a deduction when he was stopped by Dumbledore. Albus, are you giving Potter another privilege? Snape asked angrily. Hogwarts wasn't that safe anymore, so why would Dumbledore let Potter walk outside casually? Just because he's Harry Potter? It's part of the plan. Dumbledore shook his head. He saw Harry and they had entered the room on the 4th floor. He said that before the beginning of the school, Dumbledore let them do these childish organs for what? It was to seduce Potter. Quirrell is also playing with the idea of that thing. Dumbledore, do you want Harry Potter and Quirrell to meet? I don't want Lily's child to die like this. No, 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 Severus. I'll be on guard. Dumbledore shook his head to soothe him. Snape was silent. If so, then maybe Potter is safe. Oh, Harry Potter's privilege. Episode 153, Snape's Memories. Snape thought that Dumbledore's decision to let Potter swim at night was already a privilege for Harry Potter, but what he did not expect was that there were other privileges. The last flight lesson turned out to be a follow-up. Professor McGonagall went so far as to buy a broom for the big porter. This is simply fueling Potter's adventures. He was very angry and went to Dumbledore for this. First-year students don't have the right to fly freely inside the school. Where did Harry Potter come from? Dumbledore wasn't afraid of other people's displeasure? It's just a pity, Dumbledore, that those who have the ability have to reuse it. Since Harry Potter had demonstrated his abilities, he could hold a broomstick. Snape sneered. Darren's little cub didn't fly very well, why didn't Darren's little cub take the broom? For this reason, he was furious and applied for a privilege for Darren's little cub. If Harry Potter exists, then others can have it. Looking at Dumbledore's helpless expression, Snape walked out of the headmaster's office in a comfortable mood. Just after walking out, he suddenly wanted to slap himself. Is he crazy? The little cub was completely indiscriminate and was damaged by Harry Potter. He applied for this privilege to the little cub, and maybe the little cub would be able to fly around the castle with a broom tomorrow. When the Dark Lord noticed him, he would probably be very grateful for nature's gifts. Snape was holding the privilege sheet he had applied for, almost shaking in disgust. He really wanted to tear this piece of paper. But without knowing what the idea was, he still took the watch back to his office. Then comfort yourself. At best, it was an application form, and he didn't give Darren that little cub. He kept the application form because it had been approved by the headmaster, a rebellion against the Harry Potter privileges, and he could not offend Dumbledore. Well, that's it. He remembered the envy that flashed on Darren's face when Harry Potter received the broom from McGonagall, and he finally ordered a broom in silence. Oh, I hope this little cub doesn't fall off the broomstick. He thought sarcastically. When the time comes, he, the old enemy of the Potter family, will definitely laugh for a year. However, he did not expect that there were still many people who ordered brooms for that little cub, dozens of brooms, and Potter could open a broom shop. What concerned him the most was a nameless broom inside. He suspected that the Dark Lord had sent it. Although there was no evidence, he felt that the Dark Lord could do such a thing. Maybe there is a curse in that broom. As long as Potter rides and meets the conditions for flying at a high altitude, he can be thrown down. Snape thought darkly. Fortunately, the Potter cubs withdrew all the brooms. Count him smart. However, I heard afterwards that in order to make everyone happy, the little cub stayed on the broom for an afternoon with a forced smile, and then came back exhausted and fell asleep. It almost made him laugh. Sure enough, the Potter's cubs were happy to be devastated by the devastation. Not happy for a few days, though. Halloween came and Quirrell also performed a spot scare at the Halloween banquet. He felt that this guy had a talent for comedy. However, I guessed that it was not right. He rushed to the corridor on the 4th floor to check to see if anyone had moved the mechanism. And then he heard the roar of the troll. No way? Dumbledore hasn't dealt with this troll yet? Don't. And to train the Potter's cups? Snape's face darkened. He rushed to the underground toilet. In his heart, Quirrell actually put the troll into the toilet. Why didn't he put it in the auditorium? Or just put it in the Harry Potter dormitory, and when Harry Potter comes in, eat the boy? Just as he was thinking wildly, he heard the sound of a huge explosion. The sound made him speed up again. Almost instantaneously, he reached the surroundings of the trolls. Then he saw Darren pale and fall on Harry Potter. The troll is dead. Did the little cub die with the troll? Dumbledore deliberately wanted to kill the cub? Or Harry Potter's pranks? Snape didn't know why. He even wanted to pull out his wand and point it at Harry Potter. Why did Dumbledore test the savior? How could it be the little cub who had the accident? Looking at Harry Potter's worried expression, Snape spat out a voice from between his teeth and asked, "The famous Harry Potter will also worry about others? Because of Harry Potter, does the cub have to die to get it over?" Fortunately, McGonagall soon heard that the cub was all right, just out of strength. Dumbledore was relieved, and Harry Potter was happy, but Snape had some unspeakable resentment. Resenting himself for ruining their home, resenting Dumbledore for not protecting them, resenting Harry Potter as a savior. Why does it always involve others? He didn't say a word. After scolding, I felt comfortable in my heart. Hearing Dumbledore give the cub extra points, he once again silently scolded the fool, hoping that the little cub would remember this lesson in his coma. The Quidditch game begins. Snape sat in the stands. He discovers that Quirrell is casting a curse on Harry Potter's broom and wants to throw him down. Snape thought it was childish and ridiculous. The wizarding world, even if you throw it down, there is no big problem. At best, I lost the game. Quirrell may just want to break Harry Potter and steal while everyone investigates why. Snape even wanted to give him that chance. It's just that. Seeing that the little cub was jumping up and down in a hurry, Snape decided to help him with his big mercy. Who knew that when he was saving the great Harry Potter, Granger had come through everything to light his robe? Fortunately, she bumped into Quirrell by the way. Looking at Granger with a suspicious look, even staring at the way she went back to whispering to Ron, Snape's heart suddenly felt a little heavy. Would that little cub think that he really did it? But he immediately threw away the idea. What if that little cub just misunderstood him? Was he still afraid of this? A little cub's evaluation, what's so annoying? Until that day, he was bitten by Louis. Limp along. Then he heard it. Professor Snape is very nice and gentle, and he's definitely not a bad guy. That little cub actually commented on him behind his back? Snape's eyes widened in amazement. He, Snape, Hogwarts' most feared professor, the most obnoxious professor, was judged by this little cub to be gentle and bouquet? Of course, he also heard Harry Potter's malicious assessment of him. So he quickly walked over. Staring at Harry Potter, looking for deductions. But he was embarrassed to find that there was none. But reading? Deduct points. Episode 154, Snape's Memories. Soon, Christmas was approaching, and Snape looked at the two lonely children in a very bad mood. Everyone else has a home to go back to, only these two children are homeless. And he caused it all. The closer it was to Christmas, the more grumpy Snape became. So he decided to deduct points for Harry Potter. Every time he saw the face that looked like James Potter showing anger, the expression of dare to be angry and dare not speak, he was in a much better mood. Potter is so easy to use. Christmas Day. While checking the safety of the school, Snape discovers that Dumbledore has given Harry Potter an invisibility cloak. This should be the Potter's family heirloom. Dumbledore tried to make Harry Potter the patriarch of the Potter family, in order to be this treasure. It's really Harry Potter, and the privilege is more. Thinking of what Jamie had done to him with this cloak of invisibility before, Snape angrily bought one for the little cub as well. Hope the two Potters fight. It's best for Darren Porter to take this invisibility cloak and change the one from Harry Potter. Well, the little cub gave him a few heavy wizarding robes, as well as some warm and melted handguards. When he's as cold as that little cub? Snape brought the handguard. His disgusted skimmer. I think it's not as good as a thin handguard. Night. Dumbledore called him out. Let him patrol the night and help lure Harry Potter to the Mirror of Eris. What's that thing to look at? It's all fake. But he still did not refuse. He teased Harry Potter with disgust. When he heard his breathing, he deliberately swung around him and made an expression that he was about to catch him. He listened to Harry Potter's flustered steps, imagined the frightened face under the cloak of invisibility, and felt relaxed for several years. Finally, as Dumbledore had hoped, The two children sat in front of the mirror of Eris. He looked at the little cub for the first time. The little cub looked at the magic mirror and was amazed. He saw a lot of things. The road does not pick up, the night does not close the house. The world of the future? Amusing. How could such a world exist? But it is also in line with the character of that little cub. Oh, and also saw Lily? Is it the beautiful woman with the same eyes as the little cub? Is she happy? Snape's eyes gradually hollowed out. It was he who killed Lily. After that, every night, Harry Potter pulled the cubs over. The cub looked a little reluctant. Snape is a little confused. To see the parents, this child should be very happy. At first, I was really addicted to this magic mirror, but later, I found out that it was all fake. Oh, yes. This child had already found out. He spent every day with Harry Potter, looking at the images that were cruel to him. He was more sober than many, and he did not indulge in those griefs at all. Snape exited the room. He couldn't bear to listen to the rest of those words. It was he who caused the tragedy of this child. If this child knew all the truth, would he want to kill him? He laughed sarcastically. He should have died with Lily anyway. Because of this thing. Snape was silent for a while. He was even a little afraid to look into Darren's eyes. Every time he gave a lesson to Slytherin, it tortured him. Until that night. Filch said he caught Harry Potter and asked him to inform Professor McGonagall to deal with her students. He came to Professor McGonagall with great interest, and then he saw Darren. What did this kid do when he ran out? Dragon? Hagrid, that guy keeps dragons? It's possible. So this kid came to cover Harry Potter and send the dragon? And just stood there stupidly blocking the professor. Totally against the punishment. After looking at those green eyes and seeing him, he lowered his head even more guiltily. Snape hated the iron and looked away. Since you are afraid, don't come out. Finally, by the time Professor McGonagall had finished dealing with everyone, Little Breath and Malfoy had stayed with him. Talk about it. From Malfoy's mouth, Snape knew more. He even saw the Dark Lord and Dumbledore's handwriting from inside. Dragon egg, Hagrid. Hee. All are part of the plan. Only. Darren. Snape was full of charm for him. How to participate in everything? Can't stay in the dormitory? And that confinement, what is he going to do? That was what Dumbledore used to train the Savior. What did he go with him? Since I like confinement so much. So. Confinement. In addition to Professor McGonagall. I'm going to be locked up with me for a week. Silly. To this day, I still want to lie to him and say that everything is his prank. Oh, my God. If this little cub learned to play pranks, would he still be so worried? Even he himself was punished and imprisoned, still worried about Harry Potter. How could something happen to Harry Potter? People are saviors. What is he? He was a little orphan who was taken away from birth, worrying about the Savior all day long. The confinement arranged by Dumbledore was indeed in the Forbidden Forest. He didn't go that day, because Dumbledore thought that too many people would make the Dark Lord jealous. He was going to have Harry face the Dark Lord once. And Dumbledore promised him that he would not let the other children be implicated. Specifically referring to Darren. However, despite being assured by Dumbledore, Darren was sent to the school doctor's office. This was not implicated, it was purely caused by his own going up to save the unicorn. Only then did he and Dumbledore know that Darren was still a spiritual healer. Snape panicked for a moment. Wizards with psychic healing skills are very rare in the wizarding world. Because of the multiple injuries, they can all be saved. Even the Avadeso curse, as long as they are in front of them, there is a certain chance that they can be saved. But they rescue with mental strength. Mental exhaustion can even lead to death. Therefore, even if there is a spiritual healing technique in the wizarding world, it will never come out. Because I am afraid of being taken away by others and becoming someone else's medical kit. To this end, he and Dumbledore cast a confusion spell on the children overnight, so that they could not remember the events of that day without being reminded. Even Hagrid, listening to them, felt that his mouth might not be able to keep secrets, and took the initiative to ask for the erasure of his memory. As for Darren, they didn't do anything after they discussed. When Darren treats the unicorn, it is obviously a whim, and even he does not understand it himself. This led to the unicorn being saved, but only alive. A true psychic healer will help the injured person to heal completely, or to stop automatically until the mental breakdown. Darren obviously won't use it. So in the case of the unicorn's near death, just tired to sleep. The general healer, when encountering this situation, is either completely good for the unicorn or dies on its own. So they had better not wake up Darren and let him understand that maybe next time he will really give his life. Episode 155, Snape's Memories. On the day of the end of the exam, Snape discovers that Harry Potter has several strange tracks. He also heard the men tell McGonagall that he was going to steal the philosopher's stone. Ridiculous, ridiculous. What did he want that thing for? However, this also reminded him that Quirrell would probably want to go in and steal the philosopher's stone, so he thought about it in the office for a while and decided to go to Dumbledore. This was a play arranged by Dumbledore, and Dumbledore should have known what to do. So he got out of his office and went to the Ministry of Magic in London. At the Ministry of Magic, he saw Dumbledore, who was talking happily and without the slightest anxiety. Snape laughed sarcastically. The plan for the training of the Savior is that he is here to chat with people and let the Savior be anxious in the school? Because of his arrival, Dumbledore chose to stop talking and decided to leave with him. However, Dumbledore was not in any hurry, and he went to visit an old friend on the way. It was late at night. When they entered Hogwarts, they saw Miss Granger, who was in a hurry. The headmaster. No, Professor Snape stole the Philosopher's Stone. Miss Granger's face became wonderful the moment she saw him. Ah, it seems that Miss Granger is very fond of wronging the professor, and Gryffindor deducts 20 points. Snape laughed wickedly. Then, Miss Granger, tell me, is there anything wrong with you? He asked happily. Look, I have wronged him for a whole year, and now I know that he did not do it. This expression is really happy. Yes, headmaster. Professor Snape, together we cracked all the organs. Then now Harry had entered the innermost house, Darren was waiting outside, and I ran the fastest to come first. Inside the mysterious man. Then you didn't hurry up and say it just now? Snape shouted angrily, and his black robe hurried to the 4th floor. These reckless cubs. And Harry Potter, who dared to face that person alone, was he dead? Waste the life that Lily left behind. It's truly Potter's species. Oh, Severus, you're so slow, come with me. Dumbledore stopped Snape and summoned Fawkes, and together they went to their room under the corridor on the 4th floor. As soon as he entered, Snape almost collapsed and withdrew. 2 children. 2 all pale lying there, motionless, they were both dead? Severus. It's okay, listen to me, they're all right. Dumbledore comforted him and took the 2 children to the school doctor's office. Snape chased after him. He heard Madame Pomfrey say, drill the heart, oh my god, do you want the life of this child, drill the heart spell? How come? Who is it? Who was under the drill heart curse? Severus, it's Darren. Dumbledore looked at him heartbroken. Snape suddenly felt like a clown. Stupid. He's just a fool. Snape roared. Dumbledore's face was equally pale. Still, he tried his best to muster up and say, well, Severus, I noticed that Darren has been fed the potion, and it seems that we have to go with the flow. Timing of the time? It turned out to be a time-turner. I didn't expect the principal to use such a trick. No wonder there was no hurry at all in the afternoon. Turn forward 2 hours, well, here. The time goes back to 12 o'clock in the night. Snape tried to capture Darren and forbid him to go there, but Dumbledore stopped him. Severus, we can't change the ending, it's all happened and no one can play with time. Snape looked at Dumbledore's serious face, and he covered his face in silence. He knows. After Lily's death, he wanted to use this method, but after trying it a few times, he understood that history could not change. Everything you do will become history. No one can be clever in the face of time. Just like he couldn't develop a compound decoction that could maintain the appearance of a person for a long time. There was no way to persuade Lily to get out of there. Even because of the curse of pure faithfulness, he couldn't find Lily. This is a sad fact. Because of Dumbledore's insistence, they entered the room where the Philosopher's Stone was hidden early. Apparently there is no one here yet. Just one mirror. Eris magic mirror. You wouldn't just let the Dark Lord find a mirror, would you? Snape said sarcastically. Dumbledore smiled, touched his beard, and said, the Philosopher's Stone is in the mirror, and it can only be obtained by those who want it but don't want to do anything with it. Snape stood in front of the mirror. He looked at himself in the mirror and suddenly smiled at him, then took a stone out of his pocket and put it in his pocket again. Then, a magic stone actually appeared in his pocket. Boring tricks. Snape threw the Philosopher's Stone to Dumbledore. It may seem boring, but for Tom, this is the gap between heaven and earth. He just broke this magic mirror, and he can't get the Philosopher's Stone. Dumbledore smiled and put the Philosopher's Stone back in the mirror. Then he stopped talking. Snape didn't know what to say, so he stood silently on the edge, waiting for Harry and Darren came over. But first came Quirrell. Without a word, he tentatively used all kinds of incantations around the mirror. Neither Snape nor Dumbledore spoke. They knew each other existed, but didn't bother to talk. But Snape knew, Harry and Darren was coming over soon. Really? A guy with black hair and green eyes rushed in by chance. It's you. As soon as Harry Potter came in, he made Snape laugh. This guy really insists that he stole the philosopher's stone. Look at Quirrell again. This guy is even more interesting to explain to Harry Potter. The two enemies of life and death still behaved quite happily. Until. Whoops. It's like the sound of pouring water into a fire. Then Snape saw Darren. Forehead, the invisibility cloak fails to Darren E.